Hello, we're here today on this most momentous occasion. October 1st already? Can it be true? Hi, Elaine Marolakos Edelson here with you. I hope you're here with me. Astrology Mojo. And, we're going to be talking about some astrology definitions, which is what I was going to start with. But today is October 1st, 2018, 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, and 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're joining me today, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had a lot of phone calls. I was sweating. That's why I stuck my hair up in a bun. I had a lot of phone calls this week, clients and friends asking what the bleep is going on out there in this world. And so, all right, I'll give you a little bit of insight. I don't typically do political commentary. You know, I save that for the people who do that and are good at it. I'm not. I don't. You know, I can see people's information and I can see where they're coming from. So I don't typically judge, although I will have opinions about things. And at a client who called me, literally, she's an attorney from another country, and said, "What the bleep?" And I said, "Yeah, I know. It's really fascinating, isn't it? Brett Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford and all that. I mean, anything out there in the world is like ranking top in Google, right? That's the conversation right now. That's what we choose to talk about right now. And it's important. It's an important conversation. Really is. And I'll tell you something. There are some people, astrologers and of the like, doing charts for Brett Kavanaugh and for Dr. Blasey Ford, and they don't have their birth times. So I don't see those charts as accurate. I see some of the information perhaps as shedding light on, okay, well, Brett Kavanaugh, let me just move this closer. Brett Kavanaugh is born February 12th, and that makes him an Aquarian. And Christine Blasey Ford is born November 28th, and that makes her a Sagittarian. So other than that, there are no birth times. So there are no rising signs. So there is no accurate information. But I can say what I did say to friends, family, and clients, that several things are happening right now. And this is where the Venus comes into play, which is a very fascinating topic. The Venus 5-point star. This is what it looks like, actually. This is a professional drawing, a professional rendition of Venus 5-point star that I did just moments ago because I am a professional. I am a professional artist and astrologer. And so we are still under the guise of, for many of us, hi Carmen, hi Rhonda, and who else joined? I have overlapping pages. So, Nani, hi. So, Brett Kavanaugh is an Aquarian. And not only is he an Aquarian, but he's in what's called a number 7 year. So it's not a very happy year for him. Anytime he chooses to push out into the world to do something like anyone would in business, in his field, the world's going to push right back. And then I look at the eclipses that we had this past summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. 3 eclipses. One in Aquarius, the lunar eclipse in Aquarius, that is affecting Brett Kavanaugh today. The other one is in Leo, which is also affecting Brett Kavanaugh, opposite his sun sign today. And on top of that, there is the Cancer eclipse. Okay, now if you have an eclipse in your own sign, you can bet that the entire 6 months from the date of that eclipse will open and close doors so fast and furiously in your face that you don't know what happened. You don't know what hit you. And this is why I say eclipses are paramount to your conscious awareness, to your growth, to everything that you are becoming. And so what's interesting too is that Brett Kavanaugh, as an Aquarian, under the guise of the lunar eclipse, the lunar represents feminine and letting go. Okay. Now, on top of that, and again, we don't have a birth time for Brett Kavanaugh, so there is no accurate astrological information other than the peripheral. He's an Aquarius sun sign. He is a Cancer moon sign. We have a couple of other particulars, but what I think is important to note, other than the Aquarius eclipse that's on his sun sign, is opening up avenues of past information. The lunar eclipse brings up the past, and lunar deals with feminine. Now, on top of that, the double whammy, and then the triple, actually, because Pluto has just gone direct and in the sign of Capricorn, and Pluto is unearthing the unconscious, subconscious, and the collective unconscious, and outrage and manipulation and control in a sign that deals with brick and mortar type businesses. So power, manipulation, judicial, that's such a hard word to say, judge stuff, political stuff, women, and Venus retrograde. So looks like Brett Kavanaugh's past has come back to so that people can find out, are you telling the truth or not? Personally, I don't feel that he is. And on top of that, a woman enters the picture, more than one actually, but a woman enters the picture who starts off the whole scenario, to actually finishes the whole scenario, because Venus retrograde represents the past coming back and a woman coming back, or a feminine energy coming back. And it has to do with, your own behavior. When a person has an experience during a Venus retrograde, whether it's a new romance, whether it's a new job, or whether they end something, or they have a heart-to-heart with their lover, or their, best friends, breast friends, so to speak. There's a lot that goes on, and it depends on the individual. So when clients, friends, family ask me, what the bleep with this guy? And I said, well, first of all, yeah, he's an Aquarian. Lunar eclipse in Aquarius a few months ago is going to open up where he had interactions with women that now come back to the forefront. On top of that, the Venus retrograde, more women information. And without sounding too, extreme in the sense, whatever you do, folks, including Brett, Mr. Kavanaugh, and I don't like to see anybody suffer, right? But I don't agree with his politics. I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. So I kind of look at things from, how do they affect the global? How does it further people's rights, not women's or men's, but people's rights, human rights? How can we further things in a more conscious arena? And I don't feel that Mr. Kavanaugh is beneficial to this country, or to furthering our human rights. Doesn't mean he hasn't done wonderful things in his life. I don't know the guy. I don't know that much about him. I just know that astrology can shed light on certain things, and then I watch behavior. And I believe that the man is lying. And look at the position he's going for. And isn't that like the supreme seat of truth? That you don't want to be lying. Just open up, say what's true. And this is the really hard part about retrograde energy. When retrograde energy comes around, whether it's Neptune or Mercury, communication, Pluto, power, how do you deal with your power? Would you rather manipulate, or would you rather own your stuff, positive, negative, or neutral? So when you get to that place in the world where you start to calculate, how do I move forward? In a retrograde, it's time to take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, okay, what have I done to date so far in my life, what have I done that can use smoothing over? Do I need to end a behavior? And you got to own it, people. If you don't own your behavior, nothing changes. And so that's why things we see on TV, there's so much hype and drama, and there's so much extreme opinions and judgments and people flinging, I don't talk politics for that reason. I don't always agree with people about things, but I want to see what they're going to do. And if they're out and out, I look at some of the people on television these days and I think, all right, we need some fresh air. We need some people who are not restricted by lobbyists or the dollar. And that's what it comes down to. And so in the bigger picture, standing back where I've had discussions with clients and very politically active people asking me, can you not take the stand? Or I vote, I donate money, time, energy, I take polls, I put my 2 cents out there. And then when all is said and done, what I think is really important is that you own the truth. You own it. Own your behavior. Because if you don't, nothing changes. So when I look at Pluto energy, Pluto represents the collective, unconscious, subconscious power that what I call TNT for the psyche. And I knew that it going direct, Saturn going direct, Saturn deals with judges, attorneys, elders, mentors, teachers, bankers, people in brick and mortar industries that set the structure and the framework for the country that we live in, or the ideology that we express. And it was retrograde. People had time to ruminate over, well, if I tell the truth, maybe my chances will diminish in other areas that I was building. Or maybe if I look at creating a project, a website, a business, whatever I'm doing, is it really what I want to be doing? Am I following a true, authentic path? Saturn represents wisdom ultimately. Denial on one end, wisdom on the other. Now, if you're in denial, you're in denial. Nobody can shake you and wake you. But when we combine that with Pluto and the collective unconscious, if I'm in denial of doing something that causes harm to my neighbor or a group of people, they're going to shake me and wake me, right? So right now we're looking at the world stage and seeing who's owning it. Bill Cosby's owning it right now. Brett Kavanaugh's owning it right now, or not, as the case may seem to some people. So, but the world stage is, hey, stop manipulating. Use your power to the highest, best, and people, people will laugh and say, I'll meet somebody at a dinner party or something, and we'll get talking, and they'll say, I don't get this thing about reincarnation. Why is it that always everybody, they go to a reader or someone like you, Elaine, and they say, oh yeah, I was a cardinal in my past life, or I was a president, or I was a famous scientist. Why is it always the famous people? It's like, well, we've all been on that level. Because it comes up in a reading is you had the most influence on the most amount of people possible. When you are working in a field, digging a ditch, hauling crap or feeding a cow, you may not affect that many people in life, right? But then when you become a king, a queen, a pope, somebody huge on the world stage, and your decisions affect the masses, you can bet there's going to be lots of karma and lots of karmic readings with me to point those things out so that you don't continue that behavior. So that's my political position. I wish that more people would stand up and own their truth. And I wish everyone the best. And like they would say in, what's that show? My daughter and I started watching Schitt's Creek on Netflix. And two of the characters are always, when they're at odds, they'll just look at each other and say, all the best, or best wishes. And that's where I stand on politics. Now, let me talk more. Is that cool? right? Because I'm not, yeah, that's the conversation we need to have is let's own our power. Let's be more productive with it. And that's why I talk about astrology, really. Because, again, the planets don't make you do anything. We live in a cooperation with the cosmos. When you make a move, the planets reflect it. When they make a move, you feel it because we are sentient beings, all connected to one energy. Now, I don't stray from that at all, and as you evolve, I had a reading today with a client and what he said to me was, oh my gosh, I've had so many readings with different astrologers because I really love astrology, but you went so deep into a spiritual place, but then you gave me practical things to do to change the position that I'm in right now. And I said, thank you so much. That's what it's about. So I want to look at the practical side of spiritual energy because it's a combination, where if I talk in riddles or, prophecies, it doesn't always sink, it doesn't stick. You cook spaghetti, you throw it against the wall, and if it sticks, it's done. I'm all about making the perfect pasta, so to speak. Okay. Hey, hi, Rosemary. Hey, Pam. Thanks for being here. Today, we are talking a little bit more about Venus and the 5-point star that it creates. Look at this professionally made drawing of Venus and the 5-point star. And what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. Here's something really fascinating. Venus has a 14-year cycle. Just like all the planets have different cycles. They repeat. They come back around. And again, the planets are there just as an indication for me to read what you're about in this moment right now in your life. What are you doing in this moment in your life right now? I look at a planet and I get information. Hi, Darlene. I get clues to what's going on with you. So when Venus goes through a cycle, which is really exciting. Oh, and by the way, click on the blue button. If you're on a computer, it's above. Or Dean can also post the link, but it is on my Facebook page to get a 25% off session with me all about Venus for you and how you can reclaim that feminine power. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, and start allowing more flow in your life by seeing where you sabotage. Now, here's what Venus does. And I wrote it down. So, okay, between 2004 and 2018, and it doesn't matter which year you pick, you add 14 years, Venus goes through a 5-point cycle. And that means in a 10-year, oh, I forgot to unplug my phone. Okay, that's done. Problem solved. Okay, so Venus will hit the same points in 14 years. Now, let me see, I wrote it down. Between 2004 and 2018, Venus hit the same points over and over and over again. Not just Venus, but Venus retrograde, okay? And Venus retrograde hits the same points in your chart forever and ever and ever in this lifetime as you, okay? So what does that mean? Well, for one client, it was really fascinating. I said, what's stopping you? Where are you feeling stuck? What's going on? And she said to me that she's a writer and she wanted to publish more books. And I said, okay, let's look at your Venus because she is a Taurus rising sign with a Taurus moon. So there's a lot of Venus going on right there. And she's a Libra Taurus rising. So she's all Venus, right? And so when I look at her 5-point star and what hits over and over again in her chart, I look at where she gets her ideas and what stops her because it hits her 12th house of psychology and connection to the divine. So she'll get a lot of information in her dreams, what she wants to write about. And then she went bestseller during one Venus retrograde. You see, so we go over and over and over and over again. So when you're looking at a pattern, I like to look at the patterns in astrology and the things that repeat. You know, Saturn is on a 27 to 29 year cycle. So approximately every 27, it starts off when you're between the ages of 27 to 29, you have a growth spurt because Saturn represents your wisdom and your structure and setting up the maturity for your life. And we can check in with Saturn every 7 years just to see, let's check in, where's it going, because it'll hit 4 markers. But approximately every 27 to 29 years, Saturn repeats itself. And you can look back in your life, start when you were 27 to 29 years old. Where did you want to mature? A lot of people will want to get married, have children, settle down, create a business, move, buy a house. So they start to get more, wouldn't say limited, but they narrow down their choices in life to become more efficient at what they do, right? So hi, Pam. Hi, Kate joined us. Rhonda asks, everyone's 5-point star is different, question mark. Where does it begin? It begins, well, that you'd have to have calculated by an astrologer. So you'd have to look at your chart and look at the years starting 2004 when there was a Venus retrograde. All you have to do is look at your chart and see where Venus went retrograde. And you can get that information online and say, oh, it was 16 degrees Gemini. And you can put the date in your chart, and then you go to the next Venus retrograde and you'll see where it was. And then you'll see the next Venus retrograde. And eventually you'll do 5 of them and it'll make 5-point stars. And then it just repeats itself. So that's how you can tell, or you get a professional reading. And then you can see the subjects and the topics that are connected. Hey, Victoria, more family. Hey. So I think it's really important too that when you're looking at cycles in astrology, you know, I talked about giving more definitions. Astrology 101 is in one of my other talks. I talked so much today. I need my Harry Potter cup to shed light. Okay. So where Saturn makes a 27 to 29 year cycle and it repeats itself, you do the math. You do the math. You were 27 to 29. What happened? And then add another 27 to 29 years later, and then what happened? Now, what's interesting about Jupiter is that Jupiter is on a 12-year cycle. So you can go back, and Jupiter's in Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio right now. So if you are a Scorpio, Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, there is expansion happening in your life. You know, where Saturn is more about structure and organizing your framework and your architecture to build your life on so that you can mature over time. It's also about looking at denial. Where do you stop yourself? Where are you limited? Where are your fears? And no, you don't start at the placement of Venus in your natal chart. You start where Venus goes retrograde at any position or point in time in your chart. That's just answering a question I just saw on the comment feed. So when Jupiter goes retrograde, you'll see issues come up about, it also depends on the topic and where it is in your chart, but in a 12-year cycle, if you look back, let's just start like this. Go back 12 years. 12 years ago, where were you expanding? Now, maybe your waist was expanding? You eating too many cookies? I don't know. Was your family expanding? Maybe you were studying something in school. Maybe you were publishing. Maybe you were traveling, learning a new language. No matter what you were doing, approximately 12, and I mean 12 years within a 12-month period. So that could overlap a year, you know. So approximately 12 years ago, what were you doing? Think about that. When you go back in time through your calendars and through your memories, you can see the pattern that you create in life. That is what astrology does best. I think it's a human science. Where astronomy is more calculates the science of the stars and the planets, astrology literally means the study of the stars. So when you study the stars and you can look at where do they repeat themselves in your life, what comes up. Now, 12 years ago, maybe you were studying to be a dentist or something, you know. Court stenographer, whatever. And then you became one. And now 12 years later, what? Maybe you're combining a practice with other dentists, or maybe now you're going to law school and becoming an attorney. So you look at what you were expanding on 12 years ago. Now, expansion in and of itself is not positive or negative, right? So if you are expanding in areas of melodrama or victimization, now is when you can expand on healing. You get it? Get the picture? So there's a lot of change that can happen. It's not the same exact topics. It's not, and I'll say to my husband, and he's so used to this. Dean is so great about this, and I'll just be researching something, and I've got like, you know, all these calculations, and I start and I go, oh, hey Dean, I need a case study. Tell me what you were doing exactly 12 years ago within 12 months. And he'll go, all right, give me a few hours. And he'll come back and say, well, I was doing stand-up at a thing, or I was doing blah, blah, or I was traveling here, or we were making this kind of money, or I had spinal surgery, or whatever it was going to go. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, got it. Thank you. And so then I can see the pattern in real time, not just with my own chart, because that's what we'll always start with my own so that I can see. But then to be removed from it, I'll look at other people's charts in my family and say, oh, that's really fascinating. And, you know, Aaliyah, our daughter, said, well, what about me in the Jupiter cycle? I said, well, you're not even 24, so you haven't really been through a full 2 cycles. You're 19. You have a few more years to go. We could see what happened when you were 12 to 13. But then Aaliyah will say, oh, that's when I fell in love with this kind of artwork. And now she's expanding. So that's pretty cool. It's amazing. It really is. I love to look at and notate the different things that happen in cycles in astrology. You know, the Mercury and Venus are the closer planets to the sun. And so their evolution on the ecliptic, on the plane that goes around the Earth, around the sun, happens a lot quicker. So I will tell people, you know, an astrological chart in astrology is like a calendar. And you can bet that if you get sick, we've talked about this in the family, if you get sick at particular times in the year, or you get more clients at particular times in the year, or you have the same kind of need to go on vacation, not just because, you know, you have a job and you're given 2 weeks in the summer, but I'm saying when you look at your natural clock has nothing to do with 24 hours. You actually live on a 25 and a half hour clock. But society has put us in 24 hours because it makes it easier for certain things, structures, whatever. The timing of things, right? So a study was done with scientists bringing people in at random for a particular amount of time, no more than 10 days, I think. And they lived in a facility with no windows, no doors, no newspapers, no radio, no television, no computers, no data whatsoever. They could read. They could write if they wanted to. They could play card games. But there was no other thing to tell them what time it was. And what they watched was people go from their 9 to 5 routine and start to fall into a different sleep pattern. And then eventually, over a certain amount of time, this is what they came up with. People live on a 25 and a half hour clock. So what happens to that extra hour and a half? Well, if you keep adding it up, or is it a 26 and a half hour clock? I'm questioning myself now because it was a long time ago I heard this information. But there's an extra 2 weeks at the end of the year that you lose because of the way things are structured. So do you feel like you can't catch up? You're tired? I need more vacation. But if you follow an astrological clock and you look at, okay, well, every January I seem to, catch a cold, or, that in and of itself can be an explanation for your immune system. Maybe you're more fatigued around a certain time of year, or more susceptible because of what you do the rest of the year. Or maybe April comes around and you're just so excited you can't wait to go on vacation because, blah. Or, you can't wait to go look for a new job. So the calendar in your clock, in your chart, has to do with starting with your rising sign. Will always be the beginning. The rising sign is always the beginning of your calendar year. So if you're a Scorpio rising, then late October through most of November, that's the beginning of your year, and it's going to deal with your body. So then if you're a Taurus rising, end of April through most of May, that's going to deal with your body. So that all the definitions in astrology come around through 12 houses. And I've talked about that before in other Facebook Live events. But I'm really fascinated with the cycles. So when I look at Venus cycles coming back, 5-point star that it makes, what can you expect? And you can start to plan ahead for getting that new job, starting that family, raising your income, retirement, getting on a better health routine, whatever it is that you're hoping to achieve in life. Wow, how long have I just spoken for? 30 minutes and 44 seconds without a period on the sentence. Okay. I'm taking one now. Here's my break. Oh, and background music will kick in at some point. How is everyone doing? Thumbs up? Say hello? What's going on? What's your sign? What's your sign? I see we have a Taurus, and I feel like when I was a kid, I used to watch Romper Room, and I always waited for her to say my name. And she would hold up this mirror that she could see through, and she'd say, and happy birthday to Johnny, and happy birthday to Betty, and I'd say, say me. She never said Elaine, ever. What's people's signs? Let me know. We have a Virgo on board. We've got a Gemini. We've got a Leo. I don't know Jen or Carmen or Nani's. I don't remember. But anyway, just let me know. We have a 10-second delay. So as I'm talking, you're hearing the past already. Isn't that funny? I spoke with a client in Australia, and I said, it's tomorrow already. Tell me. You're in the future. You're in the future. What do I need to know about the past? It's kind of funny. Oh, thank you. Happy birthday to me. May 3rd, it'll be my birthday. Oh, we have an Aries, Sun, Libra rising. Oh, so interesting. Okay, this Venus retrograde begins in Scorpio. We're already in the pre-phase, so you're going to feel it. So October 5th is the actual starting date of the Venus retrograde. And then it goes all the way through November 16th. But you want to add 10 days, minimum a week on either side, because that's when people start to feel the energy. And and then we move in October, in later October, we will move into a Venus in Libra retrograde. So right now it's more about the law, women, power, manipulation, desires, and the past. Does that sound familiar? What are the headlines everywhere you go? What are the headlines? Women and the power that they are assuming now by standing up and speaking out, and the repercussions of manipulation and the abuse of power. That's what we're looking at. And then when we move into a Venus retrograde in Libra, it's going to, and Libra sun, rising moon, Scorpio sun, rising moon, Taurus sun, rising moon, you're going to feel it the most. Everybody else is still going to feel it, and it'll show up in your chart somewhere, but you're going to feel it the most, those signs, sun, rising, and moon sign. And when we move out of the Scorpio vibe into the Libra, it's more about harmonizing. And also, you know what was interesting too is that the Libra energy can often become aloof or vacillate just to make the peace, like, oh, that's interesting, instead of saying, I don't agree, But when we go into a Venus retrograde, oh, wow, watch the opposite happen. If you're a person who has more of a diplomatic stance on things and a non-judgmental stance on things, when Venus goes retrograde, you swing the other way. And you do that so that you can find your own judgments about yourself and others. And that's what any retrograde is really good for. Going within, seeing the topic. In a Venus retrograde, the women come back, or your feminine energy is in question. And it can also deal with adrenals and thyroid. So you want to take it slow. When Jupiter is retrograde, you look at, where do you expend all your energy? And now it's coming back. Where do you need to heal more? When Saturn is retrograde, you want to look at your fears and where you disavow yourself and invalidate and self-sabotage. Where do you do that? Because you're based on fear. And most people will stop themselves. They will limit themselves because of the fear factor. Oh, I really shouldn't do that because what if this happens and then that happens and then we keep going and then suddenly there's locusts and I can't go outside and, I can't live my life. And, that's the Saturn retrograde perspective, is looking at where the fear comes from. Pluto retrograde is where have you lost power? Where have you been abused? Where do you abuse or assume power when you shouldn't? And then how can you assume your power? How can you step back into your power and put that beautiful energy of compassion into the world and make a difference? And then there's Mercury retrograde, and that's all about communication and your technology as well, and your perceptions and judgments. Where do you judge? And I'm talking about negative judgment, not evaluation. But where do you judge out of insecurity? Or where do you take a stance that causes harm? Or where do you communicate one thing yet mean another? The push-pull, like, come here, go away information. And when Mars is retrograde, you want to find out where you are inactive in certain places in your life, where maybe you don't exercise enough, or maybe your anger comes up and then you can really deal with it. When Mars goes retrograde, sometimes it'll go retrograde for weeks and weeks at a time, sometimes for months. And that really brings up the energy of, I need to take better care of myself, or I can now remove myself from my anger so that I can get a better perspective. So when the planets go into retrograde, it's a great time to go within and discover what's happening, what's going on. So, hey, Casey's here, and hi, Star. Locusts? Yeah, locusts. That's what fear becomes after a while. I can't, the locusts. I remember when Aaliyah was little, we used to make popsicles out of, like healthy fruit stuff and whatever. And I didn't want her to have a lot of sugar and stuff. So we made these little tiny popsicles, and she was maybe 2.5, 3 years old. And she had a retrograde moment. She went into retrograde because I forgot to make the popsicles, and she would have one every day. And it was her up until about a year ago. She was eating popsicles, and they just made her happy. And I said, sweetie, you need to clean up your room. And oh boy, Aaliyah had a meltdown. I can't clean up my room. I didn't have a popsicle today, and she just lost it. I thought it was so funny. So that for her, those were locusts. Okay, so Mars is not retrograde now, but you know what? I'm going to open up my my chart, and I will find out, when does Mars go retrograde? When? Mars station. Not until September 9th, 2020. Okay, so you can eat all the sugar you want and not have to work out until then. Not true. That is not true. Because if Jupiter is retrograde in your first house or your sixth house, even if it's just transiting through the first or the sixth house, first or the sixth house, you might start to gain weight. Now, a lot of people go, no, say it isn't so. I thought the planets don't do anything. No, Jupiter's not making you gain weight if it's transiting through your first house or your sixth house. But what's happening is you're undergoing hormone changes, or you're expanding. Jupiter represents expansion. So as I said earlier, if you're expanding on the chips and the pastas and the cookies, your waist is going to expand. It just follows suit, and it's reasonable. So if Jupiter is transiting your first or your sixth house in astrology, what you want to do is reverse it. I have a stubborn streak. Who knew? Taurus, Capricorn rising, Leo moon. Who, me? And one astrologer said to me, oh yeah, every time Jupiter passes by your sixth house, you're going to gain weight. And I was like, oh yeah? Really? You think so? Watch. And so I did the first 2 times it did that. And then the next time I was ready for it. And what I did was I started working out a little bit more, but not so strenuously that I gained weight, because if I worked out too much, I would gain weight because I had a thyroid issue. So I made sure that I ate really well, what my body needed, not what other people told me was good for me. And I worked out and I ate really well, and I actually lost weight. So you can change things. It depends on the cycle that you're in. So 40 minutes just went by so fast. How fun. It's fun. Jupiter makes you eat cookies? Okay. Me too. Okay, folks. I'm going to be back talking more about random things like today, as I started out talking about Brett Kavanaugh. And I have the calendar open to November. Sometimes I don't know what month or day it is at all. But we are in October. Happy October. Halloween. Fun days ahead, folks. Okay, so I will be back on Thursday. That is Thursday, October 4th. And we'll be talking about more fun stuff, but I haven't figured out what that is yet. Some people have given requests on talking about astrology for kids and how to parent certain signs. That's on the list of things. If you've got a topic you'd like me to cover, please let me know. Someone is asking, Pluto turning direct means, well, as I talked about in a previous event, you may not have heard it, but Pluto is the planet that represents your core transformation. It's your psyche's TNT. It is power, ultimate power. And when it was retrograde, it was there for you to look at, where do you feel powerless? And how can you stop sabotaging yourself? And how can you alter your thoughts and your behaviors? So that Pluto turned direct on September 30th. Now it's about assuming power, taking back your power in small ways, setting boundaries in healthy ways, or creating a product or a curriculum if you're in education, or it's about looking at, depends on where it is in your chart and what that can mean. But so what else we want to look at with Pluto going direct, and that is what's on the global stage is a direct reflection of what goes on inside of us sometimes. So if we see a lot of chaos out there, then the way to mitigate that literally is to go inside and mitigate your own chaos and stop the melodrama. Who was it? Susan Powter, who used to say, what did she used to say? Susan Powter. Oh, stop the insanity. Yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to stop the insanity and look at ways that we can assume power, not control, because you can't control a whole lot in your world, but you can work on who you are, who you express, and how you can put more compassion into the world and set healthy boundaries with people, so that when Venus comes by and you look at your, where is it? Your 5-pointed star. Look at this professional drawing, huh? Okay. And you see where Venus repeats itself over and over and over again throughout your lifetime. Then you can see where you can take back your power and allow more flow into your life. All right, folks, I will be back on Thursday, October 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and that's 1 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be talking about more stuff related to astrology. So if you've got any topics you'd like me to cover, fun, work, play, where you get tripped up, where do you sabotage yourself? Oh, I forgot. I will pull a card for everyone before I go. And thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being here. I'll have more things to talk about. I never go without having something to talk about. All right, the card for today, folks, is Perpetual Transformation. Woohoo! Ooh, that's trippy. Perpetual transformation. And that's what Pluto does, actually. It helps you to keep transforming until you have the right fit with your body, mind, spirit. And that's a cool thing. All right. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. Be sparkly. Be present. And I will see you on Thursday, the 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Be well until then. I wish you peace.